Throughout the coronavirus pandemic, NYSEG and RG&E have been working tirelessly to keep the lights on and kitchen stoves hot. They have also been doing a great deal of giving back to the communities they serve across upstate New York. And today on Inside the Finger Lakes, we are joined by President and CEO Carl Taylor. First of all, thanks a lot for taking the time. Really appreciate it. How has the pandemic impacted the way you guys are sort of operating on the day-to-day?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one of the things, we're in the, I call it, in the business of supplying an essential service these days, and you liken energy. Everything we do today is surrounded by energy, and it's always a challenge providing energy every day, but in this kind of environment, it makes it even more unique. And to give you an idea, where we are as a company. We currently have between 70 and 80% of our employees are actually working from home. So because all the employees are essential employees as part of the delivery mechanism to delivering natural gas and electricity, whether you're coming to work every day or you're staying at home, everybody is still on the job and working. So that's one of the things that's a little unique in the business. Given the various states of where we are with the state and the COVID environment. So with that, we've had to take all the precautions to ensure that, number one, that we're keeping all our employees safe, but more importantly, our customers and our communities. So you'll notice that you'll still see a Rochester Gas and Electric a line truck out there today. But you'll notice a difference also, because typically we'd have our two linemen in that truck and they'd be heading out to an outage or some type of maintenance work on the system. And today what we've done is, because of social distancing and making sure we maintain that, we now have the second lineman is driving in a vehicle behind that line truck. So we've changed the reporting, for example, and how we actually report to the work itself. The workers generally used to come into work and we would have a meeting in the morning to discuss safety and all the work they're doing. We've changed that environment to whereby, because of social spacing, they're now getting their job orders in the yard at their vehicle, and then they're taking off from there. So a lot of work around social distancing. And then, the other challenge really customer facing is our call centers, which is critical. Our customers, they need to get a hold of us. I find our customers don't call us for the sake of just calling us. They call us because they have a true need, whether it's a billing issue, whether it's an outage, some other issue. And it's important that we're there for them. So our call center personnel, they're still reporting to work and answering phones. And but what we've done there, obviously, is I'd say we're occupying more space in the buildings than we used to. Now the good news is some space is freed up, but we're using that space to make sure that we keep them safe every day, knowing though that they are having to come into work and man those phones and answer our customers' needs. So, some really big changes around the work environment and how we're doing the work.
And I'm curious, what was it like implementing that on what I would imagine to be a pretty short order, probably in a matter of days or maybe weeks, where you had to transition from a combination of work from home and safe social distancing in various workspaces? What was it like actually coming up with the plan and then executing the plan in a relatively short turnaround time?
Yeah, I think a couple things here. So because of the business we're in, we have plans sort of on the shelf for what I call a major emergency. And this is one of those opportunities where you don't like these opportunities to come along very often. But the reality is, we took these plans and we started implementing them immediately. And you had to modify them a little bit because they weren't necessarily designed for social distancing or some of the other attributes associated with the pandemic. But they were designed really to, if there was a major issue, whether it's an economical issue or other type of issue on the system, that we had processes in place. So we really went to those plans first and utilized them as kind of, I call it the straw man or the roadmap on how we were going to implement. From there, we then made modifications. And I think, as you know, this sort of hit us very quickly, but the changes we're implementing were happening, over courses of a day and days and weeks. So as things were being implemented, we were making sure that we were on top of that. One of the things we saw early on, for example, was as we were adapting, we were also looking at inventories of supplies and what we have to make sure that we could protect, the workers in the community. And you may recall back about a month ago, right when the pandemic started, we had announced that we came across quite a bit of stock of masks that we actually use for part of our work, but we'd also acquired many of these back in 2008 and 2009 when other major emergencies were occurring. And it enabled us to, we knew the hospitals and the healthcare systems were really struggling very early on with certain PPE need in regard to treating patients. So we took it upon ourselves to inventory what we needed, and we knew we had other supplies coming, and it afforded us the opportunity to do and donate excess. And in New York State, we did about 18,000 surgical and N95 masks to New York State to distribute to those areas most need. So it also gave us an opportunity not only to deploy our plans, but also recognize that, what do we have that might be useful to others, and how can we help contribute to the communities, in a meaningful way. So that was, to me, that was something that was kind of paramount and important as it pertained to, how do we do this? Now, with that said, I'll be honest with you, we also had to rationalize our own supplies of recent, because all those orders that we thought were coming seemed to move to other places, I'll say it that way, that were in much more need than we were. But we've managed to manage through that. But those are some of the things and changes that, you can have a plan on the shelf that looks good and is going to work, but you're always adapting as you go.
When you look at sort of the sustainability of the way you're operating now and the way things are working now, most experts seem to think in the health in the public health field that we're looking at probably close to a year of needing to socially distance and do things like that. Is the plan sustainable, or do you think it's something that you guys will continue to sort of tweak and mold as things evolve?
A little bit of both. So the idea is that we're trying to make sure we've got a plan that is sustainable for whatever that long period of time might be. But with that said, we also recognize there is some things that are going to need to change, or we're going to have to readapt. And a good instance of that would be, for example, when you think about some of the things I've already described, eventually you've got to look at things and go, how long can we do this? And I think of engineering and some of these other practices whereby having somebody secluded at home in engineering might be palatable for a short period of time, but eventually project teams need to either come together, whether it's through technology or other mechanisms, to ensure that we're meeting the future and what's going on and et cetera. The other area is, believe it or not, onboarding new employees. I think this is something for all employers. As we see employees leaving and moving on to other opportunities, we're onboarding new people. And you think about the first time you got a job, you kind of came into the workplace, you met some of your coworkers, your boss, and there was a lot of interaction that took place, very personal interaction, because quite frankly, you probably sat there not really knowing what to do next. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges that not only us as a company, but many other companies are facing, is as you're onboarding people and you're trying to adapt their skills and understand processes and systems and all those things that you get to know as you work in that environment, that's becoming a big challenge. And in particular, how do we train people to be qualified? So for example, if you want to work in our gas department and you want to work on gas systems, there's very specific qualifications and tests you have to do to get those done. To be quite blunt about it, many of those systems came to a pause as part of the national pause. So those same organizations that were administering all of these tests and everything, they went on hold. So as that comes back into play, we've got to start thinking about, over the long term, how do we train people to make sure they're qualified to do the work that we expect them to do and do it in a safe manner. So those are some things that, to me, are longer term that we're going to have to either, do we go back to the way it was because it allows us to, or if it doesn't allow us to, how are we going to modify those things and change them, both in the near term and long?
In terms of usage, with folks staying home, with restaurants and retail and spaces like that pretty much shut down at the moment, or at least for the last 2 months, really. Have there been any big shifts in usage that you guys have had to sort of roll with, or maybe fluctuate in terms of where resources are going or not going?
Yeah, interesting question, and it's something we think about a lot. And because obviously, our customers are being impacted. Your neighbors, everybody. There's a lot of people who just aren't working today where they were yesterday, and et cetera. So when you think about that, and people are at home. So the one area we have seen, and especially, it depends on where you are in the state, by the way, let me caveat this, but majority of our service territories, what I'd consider to be upstate New York area, definitely seeing an increase in the usage on the residential customer side. And predominantly that is because people are home. They're working from home, they're doing things from home, their children are home. And whether it's leaving lights on or turning computers on or et cetera, or cooking for that matter, definitely seeing the residential customer usage going up some degree. On the other side, though, if you look at the total consumption, we're actually seeing that's been fairly flat. And reason is, you think about many of these commercial businesses and other businesses who use quite a bit of energy, and their consumption is actually down. So you're seeing kind of a shift in consumption of residential customers using more at their homes, and obviously our commercial customers who unfortunately have not been able to have their business open to what have you, their consumption's been down. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing it moderate. I think we'll see what the numbers all look like over time, but I think in general we're seeing there's a fairly balance on a total basis, but you are seeing that decline. And those numbers that I talk about, those are really specific to upstate New York. I think in downstate in the city, you're seeing a much bigger total reduction in usage, because the commercial load, the commercial consumption is so large as compared to the residential consumption. So I think they're seeing a much different, and the state in general has seen an overall drop in consumption in the energy sector.
So you mentioned some of the ways earlier that you guys have been giving back to the communities that you serve. Walk us through some of the additional ways. Obviously, there have been quite a few monetary contributions to some of the food banks and things like that. Walk us through what some of the big ones are that you are really proud of, and sort of show the character of what you guys are trying to do in the region.
Yeah, I think one of the first things we recognized, and I liken this business anymore to, we think about food, we think about water, we think about shelter, and we think about energy today, just because of the where we've advanced to as a society. And when you think about that, we can manage and deliver the energy product to customers, and it's what we strive to do every single day. But right off the get-go, what we figured out really quickly is that we need to make sure that delivery is even more reliable, and to the extent there's any outages in that we're getting responding even quicker than we even normally would. And to take some precautions, what we did early on is we started a program at all of our utilities here in the Northeast, where we went out to all the different hospital locations and we did line inspections, and looked at the lines coming in, looked at the vegetation around those, and made sure that the systems, non-storm related anyways, were in the best condition they could be in. Because we knew that the medical facilities, even though they have backup generators and what have you, it's key that they stay online and serve given the crisis. So that was one of the first areas that we took a look at. The second area is response. When you think about customers, it's one thing to have your power go out and decide, well, I'm just going to go down the street to the restaurant who still has power and get a bite to eat, or what have you. And we're all guilty of this, because who wants to sit at home and there's no power on or energy, right? Well, the reality is, though, customers are now, not only staying at home, but quite frankly, they're being mandated to stay at home. So all of a sudden, you've got a family of 4 or 6 people in a home, and the power goes out or the energy is turned off for some reason, and they're sitting there with no power, and they have no place to go either. So it's really critical that we're mindful of the response. And we always try to get customers on as soon as possible, but you think about the degree of impact on customers because of this, it's even more impactful. So, we've recognized that and tried to make sure that, our field personnel, and I'm really proud of all the workers here, that, they're getting up, they're getting out of bed, they're doing whatever it takes to get out there and try to get that power and energy back on as soon as possible. Those are the things you don't hear about, every day, but it's a big area of focus for us as a company, and, really proud of that. The other area is storms. We're still having storms. If, and the wind storms, the wind just can't seem to let up this spring, whether it's, 71 day and 32 and snowing the next morning. But the reality is outage management's been a little different. Normally you're bringing crews in from outside the area. We're staffing up. We're still doing that. But now all of a sudden, how we do that has to be different, because how we find enough hotel rooms, how we feed those folks, and then how we make sure they're here early enough so that when that storm does hit, and now we talk about those same consumers being out of power, how do we get them back on quicker, as quickly as possible? Those are some other modifications we've made and changed. And then when you look at the donation side, as you started the conversation in the question before, I think about the things that customers need, and they need to have their energy on, but they also need to be fit. We need food, and I think a lot of people understand that our food banks are busy every day of the year. And what we're finding, and some of the data that I'm hearing, is that they're seeing up to 50% increase in need ever since this COVID pandemic has begun. And how do we address that? What steps can we take? And we've been part of those organizations for years, but we really felt it was important. And Avangrid, our parent company, has stepped up with offering up to $2.5 million in relief funds, and a portion of that is coming to New York. And we've been lucky that in mid-April we gave to some of the major food banks and food link organizations, who really are I call it the big engines around feeding the needy. But then also we looked at that, and then looked again this last week and looked at some of the local organizations, those boots on the ground organizations also, that people don't realize that there's people every day working in community shops and what have you, and they have people lined up every day trying to feed all these folks. And then you think about the school programs. Many of our kids rely on those school programs, and these same organizations have been stepping up to make sure that children are being fed as they would have been if school were in session as normal. So that's been a big area of focus for us. And then the final area of focus is really around COVID relief. There's been many COVID relief organizations that have come up very quickly, been organized through United Way and other organizations to really help local communities. And we felt that was another area that we could stand up and really provide support. So, we're trying to do what we can, obviously, but we also recognize at the end of the day that, at the end, most of our customers, they want us to be focused on making sure that their lights and their natural gas and the energy is flowing and is reliable.
And I just want to touch on this real quick, because I'm staring at the infographic right now, and just the numbers, and I'm curious logistically what this looked like as you guys were mulling over the ideas. $575,000, 54 counties, 23 different local food resource organizations, and 6 different community funds, 17,795 in surgical masks, in addition to all of the logistical planning around operations. That is a massive, massive undertaking. What was that part of the, were those two plans being developed side by side, or was this something that you guys sort of had in contingency for a while that you were able to lean into a little more when the pandemic actually arrived here in upstate New York?
Yeah, I really like that question, because it's two things. One is, we through economic development programs, other programs, and giving programs, we try to do everything and try to do some things every single year across our territories. And you covered it well. We cover a very broad spectrum of territory in New York. This was in addition to that. So what occurred here is we have the Avangrid Foundation, which is a foundation as part of our parent company, who's been very engaged in RG&E and NYSEG service territory here in New York. And they stepped up with $1 million in giving. And then in addition, Avangrid, our parent company, stepped up with another $1.5 million incrementally to what we would normally be doing within NYSEG and RG&E, and move those funds and made them available to the 8 different utility companies and the renewable business that we have in the United States. It made those funds available so that we were able to do more impactful, more now. And you think about the COVID-19, and it's been here. We've been in this mode since basically March now, and it's really having a lot of impact. And we felt you can't wait. People are in need now. People need help now, and we felt I've worked for this company for almost 33 years. And you think about RG&E, being in the community over 170 years. We're integrated in this community, and it's really part of our DNA that we need to help the communities and the people in the territory.
And my last question for you mentioned it right there. You've been with the company for 33 years. You've been in this business for a long time. Have you ever seen anything even remotely as impactful as this pandemic has been in terms of affecting daily life and sort of the way a company like NYSEG or RG&E functions on a daily basis?
No, I haven't. I tell you, I always say I've seen it all, but you should never say that, because once you do, something new comes along, and whether it's been an industry change or an economy change. I think back to 2007, 8, and 9, when we obviously had the major recession in the nation, and how that impacted everyone. But this has been fundamentally changing everybody's lives, and and I don't know about other folks, but I have kids who are in college today, and their college experience has been quite different than mine was. Given these circumstances, and each family out there has their own changes going on. So really critical time. I think it's important that we all take this very seriously. I know there's a lot of news out there, but my thought is that everybody needs to make sure they protect themselves, but also be comfortable in how they address that, because we're all different, and we all have different beliefs, and we all have to understand that. But I think if we can all be respectful, both as individuals and as companies, serving people, that's going to go a long way. And we recognize that, and we also recognize though that this is a tough time for customers. It's one thing to have a cold spell or a hot spell where their energy consumption goes up drastically and they get a large bill or energy bill. But it's a little different, because it's not just about the bill they're getting, but it's also the fact that it's something they need on one hand, and on the other hand, they're being impacted both from an income perspective, their jobs, their families, and et cetera. So this is very unique and different, and I would wish it never happens again. But I also know that we all need to make sure that we have lessons learned, and when we come out the other side of this, whatever that looks like, that we're better prepared and can serve our customers in a better way.
Well, Carl, I appreciate the time, and of course, a big thank you to you and everyone at NYSEG and RG&E who are working on the front lines and doing this every day and making sure that, as you said, everyone's lights stay on and communities stay fed through a lot of the great programs that you guys have been giving back to.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me today. And like I said, I just hope everybody stays healthy and safe out there.
Hey, thanks for listening. Look for new episodes of Inside the Finger Lakes Saturdays and Sundays on fingerlakes1.com or wherever you get podcasts. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, consider leaving us a review or rating the show 5 stars. Both help a great deal. For more great conversations like these, check out our daily debrief. It goes inside the headlines with pieces of the great conversations we have on this and other shows. One last favor. If you can, consider becoming a supporter. You're not going to see any paywalls on fingerlakes1.com, but good journalism does cost money, and relying solely on advertisers is an industry-tried but largely untenable model. Visit patreon.com/FO1 to become a monthly supporter. If you have any questions, have an idea for a show, or just want to say hello, drop us a line at insidetheflx@fingerlakes1.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.